Hi friends, today's video is all about Guncon controllers. We're talking the Guncon 1, the Guncon 2, and the Guncon 3 for the PlayStation 1, 2, and 3 respectively. Not going to get into the games today, just going to talk about the controllers, the features of the controllers, and how they connect to the consoles. So let's jump right into the PS1 version, the original Guncon 1. It did originally come in black in Japan, but then gray in other territories, and then eventually orange, as you can see here. It only has two buttons. So there's a button here and a button here. They're called A and B buttons. And then, of course, you have your trigger. And that's it. So if you're playing Time Crisis and you want to duck cover, you have to hold the controller like this to use the buttons. From a connection standpoint, it uses the controller port. And then from the controller port, the wire comes out and goes to wherever you're connecting to your TV. For CRTs, of course, only. This doesn't work on modern flat panels. Just because of the way that technology uses the TV to capture where you're shooting, right? So pretty basic there. Two buttons on the controller. Connects to the controller port, so you couldn't use this on a PS3, for example, right? Because you don't have a controller port. And then moving on to the PS2, where they have the Guncon 2. You'll notice this is a different plastic. It's kind of shinier, especially with my lights here. But it has still some of the same buttons, but new buttons. So we've still got the A and B buttons, but they are, try to get a different reflection here, they are closer to the trigger, not so far up here where they were on the old one. Other buttons they've added, there's a start and select button right here, but it's only on one side. The other side does not have the start and select button right here. And then on the back, they added a D-pad. So there's a lot of different games that have different functionalities with the different button combinations. And then on the bottom here, they have what they call the C button, which is perfect for Time Crisis, because instead of trying to hold up here and duck for cover using the buttons, you can hold the gun this way and push right here to duck for cover. So that changed a lot. I prefer Time Crisis games on the PS2 for that very reason. Time Crisis 3 is probably my favorite on that one for playing the Time Crisis games. And then from a connection standpoint, it doesn't use a controller port anymore. So you can't necessarily use this for PS1 games because they expect the same controller inputs and whatnot. So it uses the USB for the PS2, and then it plugs into an adapter. So you'll see that it doesn't have a pass-through. So what Namco did is they made a separate controller adapter. This cable has a pass-through for your TV, which is this one, and then it has a T right here for two controllers. So you can plug in your one controller here, your second controller here, and then this plugs into your TV, and this is where your AV would go. This is really expensive, and I think it's because of the rarity, and people didn't realize that this was important to go with this as a requirement. So people, I think, tossed this, thinking it was just a regular old AV cable. So one alternative, which is actually kind of cool, is this guy right here. So this is an official Sony product. This allows you to use your controller without having the T cable. So you can plug in your USB to the front, you can plug this into this video cable right here, and then now you can plug in your regular pass-through here. But this also allows you to do other things. So we'll go through this. This is where you plug into the back of your PlayStation 2. This is your pass-through if you want to use regular cables, but you can also just use these to use any AV cables you want, and also S-Video. What's interesting about this is it doesn't require you to use composite being the exact same signal. So you can plug this in, and then you can hook up component cables. You could use S-Video. You can actually split your signal and run to a CRT and then to a capture device, for example. So if you wanted to stream light gun games, you could do it with this. There's other ways you could do it, but this is probably the cleanest way. But this is a really cool device. There were previous ones that came out for the PS2 and PS1. This is the last one they ever made as far as model numbers are concerned because it has the S-Video. The previous one for PS2 is also black in color, but it does not have S-Video. Then there is a gray one that came out with the PS1 era, and that, of course, also doesn't have S-Video. So this is the best one to get if you want to have the most options, but a really cool device that gives you a lot of different features. Like I said, even if you're not playing light gun games and you just want to play on a CRT, but then also capture footage via HDMI capture card or stream, whatever you want to do, this allows you an easy way to split your video without having to use other devices to try and split your video signal. So that's cool how that works. And that, of course, still works on a CRT, using the CRT technology for how it captures where you're shooting on screen. But the next one that came out was for the PS3, which is in a generation where we started using HDMI and flat panel TVs. So start off with the controller changes. We have different buttons completely. So on this side of the controller, there aren't any buttons. But on this side of the controller, there's two buttons right here. You'll notice that there's a handle, and there's a joystick right here. And then on the back, there's another joystick with two more buttons. And what they really allowed you to do with this and where their vision was going was flexibility. So there are games that allow you to play first-person shooter style, where you have your left stick on this joystick, your left finger on that joystick, your left hand on this joystick. And it actually allows you to look around just like you would with two joysticks, but then you're using aiming and the trigger for your shooting within that. So it's kind of weird because you're using the right joystick here to look around, but then you're also aiming on your screen. It's not something you're used to. I've tried a couple games that implement this, and it's very wonky. I wouldn't recommend it. It's a novelty to try, I would say. So let's get into the connection side of things. So you'll notice here, because we're not using composite anymore, it just has a USB. So you're plugging this into your PS3, and then you're wondering, well, how are we measuring where the aiming is going? So completely different technology, but not completely crazy. So similar to the Wii, you have a sensor bar. So instead of it being a bar, these are weights to hang behind the TV and then drape this over the front. I'll try and demonstrate here. So it would kind of hang like this over your TV, and you would pull it up to the top of your TV that way. And this is just a counterweight, so it hangs on your TV. So this is very similar technology to how the Wii would work with the sensor bar. And then you'll see that plugs in, and you'll notice there's a USB here. So this USB is going to plug into your PS2. And if you know about the model numbers of the PS2, that could be a problem for multiplayer. So you've got one USB for your controller, and you've got one USB for your sensor bar. But what about multiplayer? So the original PS3 had 4 USB ports, but after that they didn't. So there's different USB hubs you can get. There is an official Sony one. You can see the Sony logo there, which gives you back to 4 outputs. So this way you could actually end up with 5 if you needed it for some reason, but you could play multiplayer. So I do have a second one, which is right here hanging on my wall, you can see. So multiplayer on this is fun. I like the style that they have, the different game packs. So on the PS3, there's a compilation pack with 3 different games, which is a great way to play this if you're going to go the PS3 route. So that's the differences between the 3 that I wanted to talk about today. There's a lot of different options, a lot of different games. I would say that the PS3 is less supported. The PS2 is probably the most supported, and it probably has the best games. You've got games like Vampire Knights and Ninja Assault, I think it's called. Those are 2 non-Guncon games, non-Time Crisis games that are out there that are really good. On the PS1, I would really just recommend the 2 Time Crisis games. But out of all of them, I would say that the 2 best games you can play across the PS1, 2, and 3, without getting into all the games, would be Time Crisis 3 on the PS2, and then I forget the name of the game, but it comes in the compilation pack. It's like a game on the PS3 where you are playing on a pirate ship, and you have a gun with unlimited ammo. You never have to reload, and you never have to let go of the trigger. So it's a fun game that way, very arcadey, but those are some great games to play. But I mainly just wanted to showcase the different ways to play and also show you this cool piece of technology. I might actually try streaming in the future using a CRT to one and then a pass through to my capture card for the other. Maybe someday I'll try that. So check out my Twitch and see that potentially in the future. Also check out my socials. If I do stream, it's Monday, Wednesday, Friday typically. So check those out. But thanks for watching the video, and we'll see you in the next one.